Hello friends and welcome to the podcast. My name's Chris Grant and I'm Partnerships Manager here at Digital Construction Skills. And today I am so excited to be joined by Imanuel Steele. And Imanuel's the co-founder and CEO of PRIN D technology. And we're here to talk about the golden thread, the distributed ledger technology or blockchain, and how this all comes together in this exciting PRIN D software solution, which will help clients transform how they manage their CDM compliance. So Imanuel, you're very welcome. How are you?
Not too bad, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for having us as well. Today, but it's a pleasure.
Listen, we've been following your story from the very, very beginning of the project, and it's just great to have you on. And I know you've been working very hard in the last couple of years on this solution, so I'm really, really excited to have you on today. So Imanuel, shall we begin briefly by telling people who you are, what your background is, and why you decided to set up PRIN D technology?
Yeah, Imanuel Steele. I did an architectural apprenticeship when I was a young gentleman, and developed into interior design and architecture. However, there was a point in my career where I moved from the creative side to the management side. So having spent a few years or 10 years as a design manager, project manager, program manager, I realized that there was a necessity for management of information and paperwork, and it seemed like a bit of a arduous task, but it was interesting and is interesting as we're seeing. So yeah, I mean, I've gone straight into PRIN D there. There's a longer background than that.
What was there something that motivated you just to actually start up PRIN D? What was the main motivating factor for you?
Well, being a designer or coming from a design background, it was when CDM and the CDM regulations we might all be familiar with is construction, design and management. And starting on the dark side in management in 2006, I was at the birth of the 2007 update of construction, design and management regulations. Mm-hmm. So my ears pricked up with this CDMC, who was a gentleman while I was doing project management or assisting project managers. There was
a CDM coordinator.
There was a CDM coordinator, if you remember.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time we would kind of give CDM its due diligence by putting it at the front of the agenda. But for the rest of the project, there was a disconnect in the fact that, we were in construction. So in 2015, when CDM updated and introduced a new person called a principal designer, that kind of rang more true to me, given my background. But also the focus then became on the design, which gave more power to affect construction. So if we're saying before you go and build something, pre-construction, firstly, provide me sufficient information so I can bid on it and look at the job. But secondly, let's ensure that you've had a look at it and you've assessed the risks, Mr. Designer, Mr. Architect, Mr. Engineer. Let's put more focus and emphasis on the creation of the building in our minds and on paper before we go out and pay someone to take all the risk for us during construction. So it was something that really got my goat, and I left project management and became a principal designer in 2016.
Right. Okay.
Well, so yeah, as a consultant at that time, where you kind of jump out and you're one man band in it, it became apparent that to manage the plethora of clients that I expected, not saying I got, but I expected at the time, I would need some help. That would either be a big team or I could do this digitally.
Ah, right.
And that light bulb moment, like you've just hard there, is exactly what happened to me. Essentially, right. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I suppose maybe we'll just take a wee step back, because you've talked about the CDM regulations here, but maybe in layman's terms then, Imanuel, just for our listeners then, maybe just give us a wee overview of what the CDM regulations are, what they do, and why are they important?
Okay. CDM, construction, design, and management, and it really that's not really chronological, is it? Because you design before you construct, and essentially you should manage and have management arrangements before you design, and then you can construct. So it should really be called MDC, but we call it CDM anyway. That's just one of the little things. So really, putting that back in context, that the management side of it is really where you set up arrangements to say there are responsible people doing an important job, and we need to make sure that they're one, planning to do it safely, and two, doing it safely. And once they've done it, when somebody has to come back 5 years later or the following year to wash the windows, that they're able to do that safely and they can access and maintain a building in a safe way. So that's the kind of premise for having the regulations which sit under the Health and Safety at Work Act. What the CDM regulations do is appoint responsibilities on specific duty holders or players or people in that play a role in developing a building.
Right. And then, of course, then we've got the building regulations coming through Parliament just now, the building safety bill, sorry, the building safety bill going through Parliament at the moment then, Imanuel. Is it linked to that as well then? Is it, is there going to be new things, or what's emerging from that as far as you can see, maybe from a CDM point of view?
Well, that's interesting, because we were talking about duty holders as we finished the role of people and the players in complying with CDM. And the changes, as we know, will have been sparked by an unfortunate and tragic event. And if you remember back and you recall back, it was Dame Judith Hackitt that was a leading voice at the time, and still is, in terms of setting a context and setting a challenge, or a context for a challenge, and then setting a challenge for us, and I was inspired by that. I wouldn't claim that was the reason for PRIN D, because it just all happened at the same time from 2016 onwards. But essentially, it became a heralding point for what we were doing or trying to do, with highlighting the role of the principal designer and CDM compliance. And it was when Dame Judith Hackitt spoke directly about duty holders that my ear pricked up, because that to me was almost subliminal messages and saying, okay, you're on the right track, let's sort these duty holders out. So all of the bills that have been looked at and are has been ratified essentially, and it's been around competence, recording information. So that's where the golden thread terminology comes along. And these are important things. So it was only recently in July there was a more recent statutory instrument, and forgive me for using just the top line of what the document is, because I don't know where it fits into first reading or second reading, but the statutory instrument basically focuses in on the client and competence, and really from my reading reinforces, because it uses similar language to CDM regulations and refers to it often. Talks about competence in reference to 8 CDM regulation 8.2 and 8.3. It was that, to me, is the link. There's the role of the duty holder. Who are we holding accountable? There we go, accountable person. There's another one that's coming through. Responsible person, building safety manager. We still need to formalize and take away some of the kind of gray areas around the terms and where they sit, but that's going to happen in due course. But what we are aware of is what the requirements are, and most of them are common sense. So in this case, our focus through to the legislation, our focus really has been on the person who's least equipped to do their duty. So duty holders, I'm going to roll them off. So we've got, working from the bottom, we've got people who are the builders, who come out every day, leave home, and we expect to come home safely.
Yep.
We ask them to wear hard hats and put, do that type of stuff, follow rules, follow the contractor's rules set out, or the principal contractor's rules. So contractors do that and workers do that. Then you've got the principal contractor, who's resourced, skilled, competent to do their role typically. Where there's rules that are broken, we have individual bad players everywhere. But essentially, everyone who is a principal contractor does their best to align with the regulations that they need to align with. Then we've got designers. So these are duty holders, designers being one. And their role then is to design, obviously, but to design in a way that prevents risk or prevents hazards. So, concrete hanging from the air, let's think about how we're going to do that. Do we really need to use concrete? Those type of logical questions. So designers have a duty and are a duty holder. The principal designer coordinates and plans and manages the pre-construction phase. And by this new statutory instrument, a bit more than that, looking at construction and liaising, strengthening that relationship throughout construction and thereafter. So again, all of these players, these duty holders that I've mentioned, they all have some form of competence or experience or insurance even. Now, the last duty holder that I'm yet to mention is the client. The client has numerous responsibilities, and under this regulation, I share not. Somebody can find it. This legislation that's coming in, has responsibilities directly to them and extended responsibilities. So, who's trained the client, and what frameworks do we have to assess the competency of the client themselves? And it's important that we have clients aware of their responsibilities and abled and enabled to exercise and fulfill their duties, and not just say, okay, well, I've paid for PRIN D services, or I've paid for Jack Jones, or I've paid for whoever I've paid for to do this, and the legislation is being written in a way to not allow that to happen so easily or at all.
But now, I think we'll just park CDM for a moment, and I think people will think about that when we go on to the next question. But before we come on to your technology, because I'm really excited to hear about how this is all kind of going to come back and tie back into CDM. But maybe a wee departure point here is maybe just to talk a wee about blockchain. Now, I know neither of us are particularly technical geeks, but let's maybe just just tell us in simple terms, just for the listeners as well. What is blockchain, or maybe to give its proper name, distributed ledger technology? What do we mean by this, and why do many tech and industry leaders say it's the next big leap forward in tech? And what might this mean for us as well in construction?
Good question. There's two sides to this question. There's two answers to this question. And I kind of ran this past our technical team, and my first answer was really based on this side, which is to do with the money and the Bitcoin and the banks and all that type of stuff. And there's good reason why the technology is used for money and banks and that type of stuff, is because of its security, essentially. So if we take the Bitcoin and all of that stuff and we put it over there, and we just carry across the security to this side that we're going to talk about, and we say that it's a distributed ledger. So ledger could be a database, let's say. And if I had somewhere in the cloud, and that cloud was attacked, then essentially that centralized database is a lot more vulnerable than if that information was distributed in loads of places. So essentially, if that was attacked, then you had loads of other ones that could still run the network.
Sure.
And taking the security side to this side and then applying that to a ledger, which a database could hold any information. So it could be about money on this side, or it could be about how compliant your building is.
Got you.
So we're going to say we've got a secure network that's got this information distributed. That means that that makes it essentially what we call, and is a fashionable term more and more as we talk about blockchain, is immutable. So a immutable record means that once I've put it into the network, there's 1,000 copies of it. There's no way I can take it back now. It's there. It's immutable. And in that sense, I saw the interest in all of that side with the fintech side of it. But that's what inspired me to apply the technology to data and information security in construction. And I felt the best place to apply that to information security in construction, information management in construction, is the regulatory side, which I'd already been excited by as a principal designer. So if the documents that I would require to have done my job, so, I've at least seen some pre-construction information, construction phase plan, health and safety file, that type of stuff. But if I could prove that information, or firstly make it fully accessible, but secondly, in order to prove that information was there or submitted by this person at this time, at this date, was always available, could always be accessed from anywhere in the world. If I could structure an interface in a way that assisted you to know that you needed to have this there and you needed to have this there, and if it wasn't there, then it's obvious, then that could be a way, or is the way that I've fashioned PRIN D.
Brilliant. So, okay then. Well, we'll come on. I think that's kind of tied into this golden thread of information as well then, Imanuel.
It does, yeah.
So nicely.
Yeah.
So maybe it leads on to that. I know you talked about it a little bit earlier on, but maybe just what does it mean to you, in the context of this solution, and why is it important for the whole industry to get to grips with the concept?
The golden thread, I laugh a lot because again, I make the reference directly to Dame Judith Hackitt, and she asked for more than a golden thread. And there's so much that sits around the recommendations in the initial report that the golden thread seems to have been a buzz term that was taken out, almost like the golden fleece, and where the Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah. And there's big monsters that we have to conquer called, data integrity and all this type of stuff, and machine readable information and AI. We have to conquer all these beasts in order to get the golden fleece. And I don't really see it like that. A golden thread, really, or golden information must already exist in the system somewhere. And if it didn't exist, somebody wasn't competent and they needed to be, that should have been found out somewhere along the lifetime of the project. He's not doing his job. He hasn't given me the risk register. It's easy to know that the golden information doesn't exist.
Sure.
What for me has been the challenge is recording it and keeping it in one place.
Yeah. And I guess that must be in real time as well then with this blockchain. It's not just having information in one place. It's then you can put it onto the blockchain and it's everywhere. Everyone can see it. Is that right? Am I reading that right? Is that?
Yeah, that's essentially right. I mean, we all need a key or access code, and we all, of course, we've got management in terms of permissions and stuff like that.
I get that.
But essentially, that's the point. Well, the point is really who has the master key to the information. Should that be the HSE? And that's the kind of question that you have when we're providing the information, because we wouldn't have a challenge about providing the information if we weren't concerned that it was right or wrong. And who's the judge is in the end is going to be someone from the HSE. So essentially, if you can imagine that if we're talking about open information, let's not imagine that, you know, somebody walking past the building site can see how much it costs to put the cladding up. Yeah. Let's imagine that, you know, the HSE needed to do an audit, and instead of them, you know, spending however many hours with the clock ticking, sending you away for information to find that you haven't got, and you need to call up the project manager who retired last year and was on skiing holiday and all the rest of it to find it, you can just go to PRIN D and it should all be there. That's the kind of open information. So it's closed in the sense that you need to be the right person and have the right code or the right permissions to access it, but it's open and immutable as a source of truth. And it's the source of truth element really that shouldn't really scare anybody, to be frank, but that's me being a Puritan a little bit, isn't it?
No, I think it's about, I think the industry's got to build a lot of trust with the public and things like that, and I think this will restore a bit of faith if we've got all this, you know. Yeah. So it's really right. So listen, let's go on and talk about the PRIN D solution, you know. And I think you've probably answered this question already, but I'm going to maybe just ask it again, and you can answer it any way you like. So, you know, the PRIN D platform solution, then, you know, what problem are you trying to solve with this platform? What would you say is the one? If there's one, or as a key, is there a few problems, or is it one or two? What are they?
I'd say it's all your compliance information in one simple platform, and that should resonate to people who are looking for compliance information. You know, we start with CDM, but essentially technology can be expanded upon. It can be, you know, it can be customized. It can be flexible. So, you know, CDM being the backbone of PRIN D, there's an opportunity to align with any business process. So all your compliance information starts with CDM, but imagine that space where you are relaxed that, you know, whatever key performance indicator, in this case CDM, is set, the information you need to prove that you met it is there, and if you aren't meeting it, it's clear as well. So that is a simplified way of highlighting a really big issue in business. If you can imagine how much money is spent on people and time and systems and double systems and systems to check the systems, when we want to say one simple platform.
Tell us then how it works. You know, what are the key features then? You know, what and who are you aiming the platform at? I mean, we've talked about clients a lot. I guess it's clients is maybe the main people, but maybe just talk us through, you know, how would these different tiers you talked about earlier, how would they interact with this platform, and maybe just give us a sense of how it's going to all come together.
In its current version, as we expand naturally on the roadmap for development, but currently we focus on CDM. So we've actually restricted the platform in terms of the duty holders in a project. So there's the catch-all one as project consultant, and we can put other in if you really want to. But essentially, the focus has been on the players. So we talk about the client, the principal designer, the designers, the principal contractor, and the contractors. Less the contractors, because essentially they're all managed by the principal contractor. So somebody from these companies will essentially provide information to the system, which will form an immutable digital record of all of the information that was required across the project. So by having those players accessing and able to provide information, that becomes a collaboration zone for the project. Now, one question that we're usually asked is about verification. So, you know, accidentally I clicked on something and it's a picture of Donald Duck or something that was on my desktop, and that went up on the blockchain. We have to understand that due diligence means that you should know what you're putting up.
Sure.
But from a more sensible perspective, documents are verified by another party. So typically I was the principal designer, may upload pre-construction information that was provided to me. I would require that be reviewed or signed by either the people that put it up or the client themselves. So that double signature means that the picture of Donald Duck will be picked up pretty quickly.
Sure.
And the information in the system is verified. So the double signature is an opportunity to allow that to be immutable.
Sure.
And gives us a little bit of a flexibility with regards to keeping records forever.
Right. So Imanuel, is it just taking stuff from like SharePoint or a CDE software and being able to just is it interoperable then with your software? I mean, how does the mechanics of that work? I know I'm just quite interested in interoperability.
No, very interested, very interesting question, and funny you use SharePoint as an example, because that's been a lot of the kind of, well, couldn't I just use, and couldn't I, or we already do that, doing this and doing that, and essentially what that means is that there's a bespoke system that's developed with folders within folders within folders that isn't structured in a particular way, or could be structured in a particular way, but has a redundancy, because information can still be lost when somebody else tries to find it after the person who set it up was gone. So what we do is we've set up PRIN D to follow the principal designer's workflow, which is a different structure in terms of recording information. So by following the workflow and the requirements that would be required, or the documents that would be required at this particular point along the life cycle, it means that people know what they need when they need it, and they can put it in the right place. So anybody that can come back and find, well, during design, you must have had a risk register. Let me go there and pick it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's simple. You know, so that workflow is almost intuitive, and that's part of our platform and how we manage. But the focus has been on integration, like you said. So we have some current ones. One that we've tried most recently has been with a large company called Procore.
Yeah.
And Procore, most people would know of them, are a document management system.
Sure.
So the need to have a Procore integration shows that within documents, which is a plethora of information, there's a need for some structure and management as to what specific stuff we need. We are focused on your CDM and compliance information. So there's going to be loads of documents that are not relevant that you will store somewhere, and you don't want the agency or anybody else having to look through all of them to find the one that you need. So what we are is a specific space for your CDM compliance information across your life cycle.
Right. Got you. So it's not a case of just uploading all files and everything and then sorting out the health and safety bit like we all have to do with
SharePoint or Dropbox or anything.
Yeah. It's just I know it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the biggest pain in the with things like this is
another one, Chris, is we transferring information. If it's too big for your email, you use a file transfer system.
Yeah.
So essentially, that information is time limited within your email. I was on holiday, I wasn't well, whatever happened, you know, I might even be too embarrassed to ask the person to resend the link.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, what PRIN D says is upload your file because it's needed, and whoever needs it accesses the system to see it.
Got you.
So the record essentially exists on the project, and the people who need to access it can access it. So we've succeeded in helping to eliminate all the stuff that you might have to go back in your email and try and search who sent it, what was the subject title again, or what they might have put in because you're spending that time. Imagine the clock. If you're a director or you're anybody, there's a time clock to how much time we spend digging through, trying to find, attaching, not attaching, downloading, putting in a software folder, saving it somewhere to come back later, to move it somewhere that it should have been in the first place. All of those things that we never go back and do sometimes cause gaps in records and all types of stuff. And sometimes it's not because people are willfully or doing it or lazy. It's just because, there was a need I found for a structured, secure and safe system for all your compliance data in one simple platform. And that's what we created.
Yeah. And I think if it's easy to upload and I think that's part of the challenge for certainly a lot of site-based people, is because your site managers, project managers, they're very, very busy, and it's always the here and now they're dealing with. Always something else happens that, the paperwork uploading becomes a lower priority in terms of the shorter term type of thing. But if they've got someone that can just go boom, and it's on somewhere and it's there, and people can see it and monitor it, and that, I think that's a real advantage. I would certainly think, because our site teams are under far too much pressure, and we talked about CDM in the past. A lot of the CDM comes down to the guys on site dealing with a lot of the stuff that maybe they shouldn't have to be dealing with because it's been design issues or something else that should have been sorted out much earlier in the project. So listen,
always happens. Always happens.
Yeah, totally. I'll not get my soapbox, but I can see. But this is where I think that whole, you're starting to see. I take it then. Maybe this is a good point to actually say. I take it there's like dashboards then, or something you can actually monitor trends, so you can actually see how things are getting uploaded in real time type of thing, Imanuel.
In the early days, I was really I was a little bit embarrassed. Might be the wrong word, but I was embarrassed, I'd say, to demonstrate the platform, because to me it was really simple. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's really simple, And I had a few comments, oh, well, it looks like something that you've knocked up kind of thing. But lo and behold, over time, and even though we're going to rebrand, we're in the process of rebranding at the moment, we will still maintain that simplicity for that exact reason.
Yeah.
That, we were experimenting the other day with some new functionality, which is part of what we do. There's a roadmap for years ahead of loads of stuff that we need to or would love to develop in addition. But we were experimenting with the opportunity to monitor the supply chain. So, you can imagine there's 3 lorries come in, all the fours and all that stuff is set up, 3 lorries waiting to be checked, materials coming in, someone signs it. How does that record get right back to the client QS who needs to make sure that it was on the same line? What's that link between, and we were experimenting with the opportunity that we've got, mobile identification. So obviously the blockchain needs some form of 2-factor authentication to say, yes, this is the person. Yeah. It doesn't need it, but we use that as part of a security. So that opportunity to have a handheld digit, let's call it, I'm going to use non-technical terms there, meant that we could, set something up in the head office that needs to be signed off on site at the flick of a finger, that, confirms that record. I take a picture and put it on PRIN D as well.
Sure. So yeah. No, that's interesting, because, a lot of the project that we're involved with at the moment is trying to get what I call the kind of the guys on site in terms of subcontractors to adopt digital tools and digital records, and this is where the power of this will be. If that's when we can start to see the benefit of this, because if they've got a digital record of some kind showing some kind of thing that can go onto a blockchain, they get paid quicker. The client knows he's getting paid, and it's completely transparent process, and there's no fighting or haggling in between. Oh, there will be in construction, but you know what I mean. The principle's there. So exactly. I guess that's where. So that kind of ties up for me in my mind then how this kind of works, even with
So there was the end part of your question, which was to do with dashboards, and it's something that we're in the process of continuing to develop. At the moment, CDM is so simple we've made CDM appear very simple. That there's no need for a specific dashboard to demonstrate, because we use red, amber, green as to whether you've got the document in there or not in the stage of upload. Now, going forward, as we work with clients with different aspects of the platform and the functionality of using and accessing blockchain, supply chain example we were exercising and playing with before, CDM and other regulations, golden thread as we've spoken about before. So we're beginning to now set up templates, which again need to be client-led. And that's a technological thing, specifically when you either bootstrapping or have to pay for the software development. It really then needs to be closely developed with the client who's going to use it or needs it.
Sure.
So we've got a ton of things up our sleeves, and as we grow our clientele who express these additional needs for the software and the functionality and the access and the security and the information security, we see CDM as almost the spine, regulatory compliance, a strong spine, a robust spine, of which, ribs of information, different types of information, supply chain being one example, could really, sit off that. Obviously, there's some form of compliance that requires that you're required to comply with when you're procuring or accepting goods anyway. So it already links in.
What for your clients then, Imanuel, and what becomes possible, after this adopt and embed this solution? What are the main benefits for them? What would you say?
What we've found, and we're in the process of kind of doing some research into that, because we're exercising with the current developer, student accommodation development. And, we're in construction at the moment. So we've got a full record of versions of compliance information. So you can see my brain thinking of the exact doc. I can see the platform right in my eyes when I'm speaking to you. I'm reading it in my brain. We got versions of the construction phase plan. You click on to design, and we've got the design which registers and other information. And we found that by adding and the flexibility of customizing each page, so you can add different documents, we're finding a wider variety of needs. So in terms of what benefits people get out of the end of it, essentially, or our clients get out at the end of it, we always hark back to the immutable digital record. So we're coming to handover at this current process, and we're talking about the O&Ms, we're talking about the health and safety file. At the moment, we have the client's approved format for these documents sitting. I won't say waiting for the contractor to give us the information, but essentially they are there, which is management arrangements in place. So by the client having management arrangements in place and the opportunity for the contractor to provide the information as and when it becomes available, we're confident that we're assured in our CDM compliance. Obviously, there's work to be done. We can't say you're never fully compliant until you look back and you see. But essentially, in the process, having the facility and the arrangements in place, puts us in a really good position. So that's kind of where we're exercising the current benefits. So in terms of going back, in terms of being able to refer back to what the contractor said, or where this particular element of risk was identified, was it pre-construction or was it from, these have been interesting things that we've been able to find on the platform by using the platform. So as in the years to come and as time goes and as we onboard more and more clients, We definitely are open to the scope of widening the remit. But having this opportunity to, one, prove to anybody that needs to look, let's not say the HSC, we're not calling it on anybody, and find, the information you need when it was uploaded and be assured that you are compliant is our current USP, yeah.
And I take it this sounds like it's very much parallel with, like, all the kind of BIM world, if you like, with all the different project lifecycle phases. And ultimately, when you're handing over a project, if you look at it through the BIM lens, is to hand over a client a really good job with all the information they need to operate and maintain that building. So I guess this is a real parallel with that as well, Imanuel. And that's the other element of assurance that clients would have, if they've got a model they can run and their asset management people can run, but they've got this assurance then of the health and safety part of it as well. And this, do these kind of merge, do you think? Or
they do. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. So essentially, it's nice that we're actually moving the focus. We're almost going backwards in time in a project. So we were talking about the construction phase, and that's where the focus of stuff is. But when you refer to BIM, we kind of reel back a little bit into the design stage, and essentially, all my BIM compadres will agree that BIM is for the full life cycle. I'm not going to get into any arguments about that. But essentially, it's the design phase. This is where it starts, really. This is where it should be. Well, we're going to go back further in a minute, but essentially, BIM sits, from when the designer is appointed to start doing it, and then lives throughout as long as the designers are involved. So if in construction there's a disconnect and the contract doesn't say, yes, we're doing BIM as well, then it may tail off a little bit. So there's all different types of things in the BIM world that essentially is being worked upon in the BIM world. So that sits parallel to the construction world that we were just speaking about. They're almost separate silos, even though construction really overarches pre-construction's relevance, but then BIM overarches construction's relevant times, and they still are kind of like oil and water almost. And I shouldn't say that, because we maybe had some washing up liquid and it mixes a bit, but what we're trying to, the point we're trying to make is that the common denominator in that mixture is information. So we might see the model as the output, but behind that sits Kobe, which behind that sits at some scale it's ones and zeros. So it's information, and your risk register, or the document, all the documents you've compiled into your pre-construction information, or all the information you've compiled into your construction phase plan, and the same for your health and safety file. The common denominator is information. So at some points, even though that information is provided by a different player, so designers might provide the risk register and the contractors may interpret those risks and provide some of the mitigations for them. So where it mixes like that, that's what I probably talk about as the soap liquid that help the oil and the water a bit. So we need that bit that says, okay, that overlap, that interface, let's what information is used to manage that, and that's where BIM comes in from an information management point with ISO 19650 and says these are the documents that you require, and that's what BIM, we've programmed into our ISO 19650 template. So if you click on the ISO 19650 template, it adds those requirements into your CDM requirement, under your CDM requirements. So once you've added your CDM stuff as you go along and people upload them, you can also upload those documents that are required. So that's where we reel back a little bit further before the contractor was appointed. Sorry, the designer was appointed. So we've talked about the construction, we talked about design, BIM. Now we've gone back to that clear field before we appointed the designers. And that terminology, that phrase, appointing the designers, that's a duty of the client.
Yeah.
Is the only person, he or she or it is the only person that kind of is the appointing party to use ISO 19650 language. And if the client is carded with the responsibility to establish an information management system in ISO 19650, which is BIM, then herein lies PRIN D to assist them in doing that. So an information management system or a way, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but essentially I think I'm along the right lines. I'm saying think in a modest way. So essentially those information requirements and the exchanges of that information that's required is easy to is possible to capture.
Yeah.
And then who's required to provide that information is also possible to capture. And if we can capture the who, the what, and the when, if we put it all in one place, then we've got, a digital record of compliance.
Well, and as you can see, there's a plethora of record keeping and information and stakeholders and duty holders and all the rest of it. So I'm all for any technology that helps us make this a bit easier for people, because as you say, a lot of the time is not through willful negligence. It's just a lot of just people just don't know what they don't know sometimes, and or assume somebody else has maybe done it. So so this is great. So so maybe we've got a few questions left, Imanuel, but listen, just quickly then, how long does it take to set up and operate the system? And what training and upskilling would be required? Is it fairly intuitive, or what?
We're at a very early stage in our product life, let's call it.
Yeah.
So in terms of managing the software, we've been doing quite a bit of a consultative sell, where we're providing the consultancies to CDM generally, and the software sits in the background. As we go forward, the idea is that the software is developed to be, operated by clients. So that's what makes your question even more robust, in the fact that there will be training, and we are in the process of developing specific training that gives the background of CDM, as I've tried to whistle stop tour here, and then also, how the platform enables people to do that, and assist them, either performing the role or monitoring how the principal designer role is performed. Obviously open to I do some bit of kind of lobbying, if you call it that, or working with working groups to kind of support the industry players, typically. And I know that we've done some work, or I've probably got some homework for you, Chris, in terms of your efforts with the digital construction skills and expert partnership groups and stuff that you've been developing over time. But we're happy to kind of onboard clients and do trials as well. While we're developing in the early stages, as we move forward, it would be really good to kind of support the industry in understanding blockchain and the benefits of using that technology, but also in just typically complying with CDM and their duties typically.
No, I think it kills a lot of birds with one stone in terms of the regulations coming up. And certainly in Scotland here, and I'm assuming England as well, that there will be a big blockchain strategy, in terms of government level, even higher than the construction industry. So it does look like there's a lot of interesting development. So I think it's and clients will be definitely interested in things like this. I think so far then, Imanuel, you're on a learning journey. You're on a road on the right road by all accounts, with your solution. But what can others learn from this? Have you any advice for anyone looking to adopt a similar solution, or just maybe for those looking to invest in digital tools more generally? What's your advice?
I think really and truly we have to be a little bit more open to innovation. Generally, this is general advice. We've come up and we've come a long way in what seems to be a long time for me, but a short time typically. And it's not been easy because technology develops so quickly, and it really is in the sense of being able to realize a vision is it's a possibility for people now. So someone can sit in their bedroom, and create something that answers a question.
Yeah.
Now in terms of the industry, our beloved but very traditional industry, moving and shaking to keep up with innovation is a task. And I think the industry has to be aware of the speed at which, technology is moving, and everybody knows the benefits. We've all got a computer. We've all used a mobile. There's no need for me to reiterate McKinsey and talk about, we all know the answers. Yeah. So the question is, are the companies that need to be, the larger ones trickling down to the smaller ones, but the smaller ones also, are we adopting and prepared to adopt, and are we prepared to trial and fail in some cases? Yeah. Just because it needs to be in a robust fashion. No one throws time and resources at anything for no reason. But what we're trying to say here is the research and development appetite. What is our research and development appetite? Where is that sitting? How are we, supporting and open to trialing and open to working with, micro organizations? Are our PQQ set up to accept micro organizations typically? And we know the answer. So how does and that's even government stuff, you think, wait a minute, so the government's supposed to be helping, small business here. How do we answer this?
You're going to have me banned off. You're going to have me banned off the airwaves. You're controversial here, Imanuel.
So we know the answers as well, Chris. This is the thing,
Yeah.
And I mean, you may or may not go back before my time, but your experience is going to be wide enough to say that it's been a long time. These same things have been on the list of things to change. But one thing that hasn't kind of stopped is the progress of technology and innovation.
Yeah.
And if we just jump back to the other side of blockchain that I'm not really allowed to talk about because it's got nothing to do with PRIN D, but if we look at how fast cryptocurrencies or that type of stuff has moved and is taking over or involved in, is finding itself embedded into society. And we don't even need to go to cryptocurrency. We can talk about countries like Estonia and Dubai and other ones that are really taking on blockchain at a government level you were talking about.
Yeah.
For those benefits, voting and IDs, supply chains again. If we really stop to look how quick it's moving, then we missed it. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're good at doing is, let's just have a look and see how, let's just, it's gone, the bus has gone, mate, So if we stop and look, we miss the bus. We need to be prepared to research and develop and sponsor develop, and give it a go.
So I think you've got an uncanny knack of nearly answering my next question, but you're ahead of your other answers. But I'm going to just say, because I think it's very clear that you're very proactive and you're very passionate about using innovative technology to transform the culture within the industry. Then, so tell us a wee bit more then about the wider conversations. You talked about clients here, I guess already, but what are your what conversations are you having, and what are your aspirations and hopes for the future of the construction industry?
Right, so I have been and will be a protagonist for CDM. Why that is because I've been championing or needed to champion CDM regulations and compliance among some of the institutions that I've been speaking to and have been supportive. So the HSE being one.
Brilliant.
I've had numerous conversations with the HSE. Being a government organisation, it's easy for me to expect more than they can ever give. So I'm grateful for even the conversations that we've had so far and the engagement that we've had, and that continues that we continue to have. One thing that's been interesting, that's been I've been a part of, is the Golden Thread initiative, which is sponsored by the Ministry for, I'm going to say it in full this time just so I don't get the acronym wrong, Ministry of Communities, Housing and Local Government.
Wow.
And they've been really keen on picking up, the Golden Thread and the legislation that sits around it. So they've been working with Registered Social Landlord in the UK to develop a report around it and a bit more information. So it's been a very interesting journey. As one of the industry experts there, I call myself that, but I have been singing the CDM, waving the CDM flag, which sometimes I find strange because it's written and robust. So for me, I might be biased, but it's a good thing to be biased to. For me, it does answer the questions if we comply. If we do it right, then it brings us quite far. So that's basically what I've been singing. I've also been working with the British Standards Institute, BSI, and that's been a proposal which has had mixed views, dare I say, coming back. But a proposal for a digital standard for compliance. So let's now, because compliance, yes, you need to give me this, but how? And if we're talking about a digital record, what is a digital record? What's the standard for creating one? So that's been something that I'm sure they're working on in different arenas, and I'm very bespoke on CDM. So again, that's something that I still will champion going forward. We've been speaking about widening that digital standard and a compliance standard for not just CDM, but widening that across, because I was talking to you before about ISO 19650, which is what we've been able to template. We've templated a version of, as it develops the Golden Thread in the platform as well. So in that sense, working with and supporting, providing information, I'm quite open. What I'm talking about is written already, so I didn't make it up. I don't have any trademark over CDM stuff. I'm just helping everybody to do what's already written somewhere. And I enjoy doing it. That's probably why I do it, more than people that probably don't enjoy it, which is why they don't do it. So they're happy for me to help them do it. Yeah.
Well, Imanuel, that's been absolutely fascinating conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I always enjoy listening to you, and it's great to hear you and how things are progressing as well. And you got to keep fighting the good fight with these. Like bringing technology and CDM together can only be a brilliant thing for the industry that can transform us and help us all do our jobs better. And rebuild that trust and faith in the construction industry, where it's been damaged in the past,
Exactly.
So, but listen, man, that's been tremendous. I'm not going to keep you any longer because it's quite near dinner time now. So look after yourself, and thanks a million. And I'm looking forward to keep continuing the conversation going forward with you, and any help we can do, we'll be certainly championing what you're up to anyway.
Chris, it's been a pleasure. No, absolutely, and thank you for having me. It's been good. Always good talking to you as well. Can you see that? So look forward to another time.
Brilliant, Imanuel. Take care of yourself now. Good luck.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.